Stop wasting time comparing dozens of soundbars. So which soundbar actually delivers the best Dolby Atmos experience for most people in 2026? Today I'll show you the one soundbar that stands above the rest and why it's worth your money. Like the video and subscribe for honest soundbar reviews that help you buy smarter. Comment. Make sure to tell me what the next video should be about. And check the description for best prices and product links. Why buying a soundbar feels impossible. Ever notice how shopping for a soundbar somehow becomes more confusing the more research you do? You start looking for better TV audio, and suddenly, you're buried under 11.1.4 channels, Dolby Atmos, virtual surround, and a dozen marketing terms that make every soundbar seem like the greatest thing ever made. And that's exactly where most people get stuck. Here's the biggest trap. Companies want you to believe more channels automatically mean better sound. But what they don't tell you is that many of those channels are actually virtual channels, created through software processing instead of physical speakers. So, while one box may advertise huge channel numbers, the real listening experience often comes down to the quality of the tuning and audio processing. Then there's Dolby Atmos. Everyone wants it. Everyone talks about it. But very few people explain the difference between a soundbar that creates Atmos virtually and one that uses actual upfiring drivers. The difference can be massive. One creates a believable sense of space. The other can make it feel like sound is genuinely moving above your head. And that's before the endless upselling begins. First, they sell you the soundbar, then the subwoofer, then the rear speakers. Then suddenly your simple upgrade has become a full-blown home theater project. But here's the question that matters. What if you don't want any of that? What if you just want one soundbar that sounds great, works properly, and doesn't take over your living room? Because that's exactly where today's recommendation starts to get interesting. The one soundbar most people should buy. So after all that confusion, which soundbar actually makes sense for normal people? Not the most expensive one, not the biggest one, and definitely not the one requiring 5 separate components before it sounds complete. The soundbar I keep coming back to is the JBL Bar 300. Now, before anyone jumps into the comments, let me be clear. This isn't the best soundbar money can buy. If you have an unlimited budget and a dedicated theater room, there are more powerful systems out there. But that's not the point. The real goal is finding the soundbar that delivers the best balance of performance, simplicity, value, and daily usability. And that's exactly why the JBL Bar 300 stands out. This thing gives you a surprisingly immersive Atmos experience from a single compact unit. No separate subwoofer, no rear speakers, no complicated setup process, just one soundbar designed to make your TV sound dramatically better without turning your living room into a construction project. And what impressed me most wasn't the feature list. It was how JBL managed to solve several of the biggest frustrations people have with soundbars today. Let's start with the part that matters most. How it actually sounds. Why? It sounds better than you'd expect. Here's the question I had before testing it. Can a single soundbar without a separate subwoofer actually feel immersive? Surprisingly, yes. The secret is JBL's multi-beam technology. Instead of simply firing sound directly at you, it intelligently bounces sound around your room to create a much larger soundstage than the physical size of the bar would suggest. Now, let's be realistic. Will it sound exactly like a full Atmos system with dedicated ceiling speakers? No, but that's the wrong comparison. The better question is whether it creates a noticeably bigger, wider, more cinematic experience than typical soundbars in this price range. Absolutely. Movies feel larger. Action scenes have more scale. Ambient sounds spread beyond the TV itself. Instead of hearing audio from a box underneath your screen, the room begins to feel filled with sound. But honestly, the feature I think most people will appreciate isn't Atmos. It's pure voice. If you've ever found yourself constantly changing volume because dialogue is too quiet and action scenes are too loud, you'll understand why this matters. Pure voice intelligently enhances speech clarity so conversations remain easy to understand without destroying the rest of the soundtrack. And trust me, once you get used to clear dialogue every single time, it's surprisingly difficult to go back. But great sound is only half the story. The reason this soundbar makes so much sense for most buyers comes down to something even more important: simplicity. Why this one? Part 2, the simplicity and value. But here's the question most reviewers never ask. what good is amazing sound if living with a product becomes a headache? This is where the JBL Bar 300 starts separating itself from a lot of the competition. Great sound gets your attention, but simplicity, convenience, and real-world usability are what make you happy months after buying it. Let's start with the biggest advantage. This is a true all-in-one system. No giant subwoofer taking up floor space, no rear speakers sitting in the corners of your room, no extra cables running across the house. Everything lives inside one clean, compact soundbar. And honestly, that's a bigger deal than many people realize. Most buyers don't have dedicated home theaters. They have living rooms, apartments, bedrooms, and family spaces where keeping things simple actually matters. JBL understood that. Despite being a single-bar solution, it still delivers surprisingly satisfying bass that gives movies weight and impact without becoming bloated or overwhelming. And setup? It honestly couldn't be much easier. For most people, it's one HDMI cable and you're finished. Connect it to your TV's eARC or ARC port, power it on, and you're ready to go. No complicated menus, no calibration microphones, no weekend-long setup project. Within minutes, you're watching content with dramatically better sound. But don't mistake simplicity for compromise. One feature I really appreciate is the extra HDMI input. A lot of buyers overlook this until they actually need it. Whether you're connecting a gaming console, Apple TV, or Blu-ray player, having that additional HDMI port creates more flexibility and can even free up valuable ports on your TV. Add in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, AirPlay, Chromecast, and multi-room audio support, and suddenly, this becomes much more than just a TV speaker. Now let's talk about the reason I think so many people end up choosing this soundbar over more expensive alternatives. Value. To get a noticeably better experience, you're often forced into an entirely different pricing category. Suddenly, you're looking at premium soundbars, separate subwoofers, rear speakers, and much larger investments. Yes, those systems can sound better. Nobody is denying that. But the real question is this: how much better? Because for most people, the jump in performance isn't nearly as large as the jump in price. The JBL Bar 300 lands in that rare sweet spot where you feel like you're getting a premium experience without paying premium system money. It's the point where performance, simplicity, and affordability all meet. But before you rush out and buy one, let's address the biggest objections and concerns people usually bring up when talking about this soundbar. Addressing the skeptics. Now I can already hear some of the comments. There's no way a single soundbar can replace a real home theater. And honestly, that's a fair argument. After testing countless soundbars over the years, from entry-level models to flagship systems costing several times more, one thing becomes very clear. Every product involves compromise. The trick is finding the compromise that makes the most sense for your situation. Take something like the Sonos Beam Gen 2. It's an excellent soundbar, but it lacks the additional HDMI input. And in my experience, the Atmos presentation doesn't feel quite as spacious as what JBL achieves with multi-beam processing. On the flip side, cheaper soundbars often cut corners where it hurts most, especially in dialogue clarity and overall sound processing. The JBL Bar 300 consistently finds a balance that many competitors struggle to achieve. But let's tackle the biggest criticism first. What about the bass? And yes, if you're expecting the room-shaking force of a large dedicated subwoofer, this isn't going to do that. Physics still exists. A separate subwoofer moving a massive amount of air will always produce deeper bass. But here's what surprises people. The bass here feels tight, controlled, and well integrated. Instead of overwhelming everything else, it supports the experience. Explosions still feel impactful. Action scenes still carry weight. Music still sounds full. And for most living rooms, that's exactly what people actually need. Then there's the second criticism. What about a full AV receiver setup? Again, that's a valid point. A properly configured surround system with separate speakers will always have the performance advantage. That's simply the reality of dedicated audio equipment. But for most people, that's not a product purchase. That's a hobby. It requires research, planning, speaker placement, wiring, calibration, upgrades, and ongoing tweaking.